Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. Live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today, Monday, December 18th. 2017, 7 days until Santa comes, Duane. But for the last few weeks, I have to say, Santa was pretty generous with you and with every Man City fan out there. 14 points clear of Chelsea, 11 points clear of Manchester United. Not even halfway to the season yet.
They're more than 20 points clear of Spurs after the 4-1 win on Sunday.
Yeah, but Spurs is 7th. Like, Spurs is far.
No, just because in the preseason, a lot of people were picking Spurs as a potential contender for the championship, and to be more than 20 points up on them. I think 19 points up on Arsenal. It's wacky, but I mean, it's hard for any of these teams to keep up with City. And look, we all know my bias here, but I'm trying to take an objective hat off here, and I think anyone or put an objective hat on, I should say. I think anyone who looks at this and looks at this team right now understands that Manchester City is a talking point in the European season right now. 17-1-0 in domestic play. Only one loss overall on the season in competitive play. That was in a dead rubber where they had already secured first place in their group in the Champions League, and with the derby upcoming on the Sunday. So, I mean, I don't want to make excuses. A loss is a loss, but really, I think that puts it in perspective. And the question, is, I don't think the question is whether they win the title right now. It would take a major collapse for them. But
the question is, when do they clinch? Like, how many games will it be left when they guarantee the title?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's compared to last year. We've done a little of this year. I'm trying to remember. I think Chelsea was up about 8 points at this point.
I think it was
last
8
year.
or 9.
We were already sort of
8 or 9, so somewhere like below 10.
Yeah, we were calling it already, and they were, occasionally dropping points. Whereas this City team right now, through the heart, I guess, the only question some people might have out there, and there are people that are going to maintain doubt. Most of them are probably United fans until the bitter end. But if they go through a process where they play a Champions League fixture, they go into the derby, and then they go into a midweek game, and then they play Spurs, and they go through that perfect, then it's hard to imagine how anything is going to derail them, even injuries, because they've had Aguero out for a while, and they've had Jesus step in to take over for that position. They've had Silva out for a little bit, and De Bruyne is able to step up and play the role he has. And when De Bruyne is not going on full measures, Silva is going on full measures. And then they just have so many depths much depth out there that it's just hard for them to. I was joking the other day. They were up 3-0, and like as a garbage substitution, they put in the four-time African Player of the Year. Maybe he's a little getting on in years, but still, Yaya Toure is your garbage substitution, right? Like, come on, man.
No, for sure. And you're talking about Gabriel Jesus becoming a threat, becoming a constant goal scorer, constant opportunity creator. And we're in Christmas time, and who else but Jesus to be very good for Man City?
For sure. And look, there's another name too that really has stepped up in Aramente is a guy that really was. A lot of people were calling a wasted signing a year or so ago. Under Pep, he has become a consistently dominant performer as a center half, able to overcome Vincent Kompany's continued injury problems. And Vincent Kompany's in reserves there somewhere. You look at Raheem Sterling, who may be the poster child for all of this. He's a guy that a lot of people have really taken a task to for years over his decision to leave Liverpool, over his, diving, over his inability to finish. But you look at his finishing rate this year, you look at his success, particularly late in games, how he opens up the offensive pathways for that club right now. And you have a player that really has blossomed under Pep. And it goes on and on and on down the line that he's just, the genius of this manager is showing in year 2 of this project, and 17-1-0 speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as a journalist, not as a fan. As a fan, it's brilliant. As a journalist, it's impressive.
Yeah, the one caveat here that it's something I read yesterday, Duane, and it's about about Pep Guardiola's last three jobs. If you're looking at his last three transfer windows with the different clubs he had, so talking about City, Bayern Munich, and Barcelona. So the last few years it was with all of the clubs. If you had all the money he spent in the transfer windows, you get over $1 billion of transfers and players coming into the teams where Pep Guardiola's manager. So which one is it for this case, Duane? In your own opinion, did City buy a title, or did Pep Guardiola, with his money, of course, buy great players that he can mold into title-winning contenders? Are those the same things, or are those two different ideologies?
Leicester bought the title. Everyone buys the title. You don't win a title without spending money to buy the title. It's an absurd sort of idea that somehow through just pure, so someone who's like a purist out there, could you please tell me the last time a major club or a major league was won by a club that was completely developed internally? Could someone please tell me that, because I'd love to know.
In other sports, I don't think it's even possible. I can't imagine the Montreal Canadiens or any other professional sports team in North America or in other sports and soccer create a team of players that they created, because it's literally not possible. Soccer is the only sport where you have development starting from the young age to the first team in the same pyramid, under the same umbrella of that club, of that team. This is barely exists in basketball, and it doesn't exist in any other. So you're right. It's kind of, when you look at it pragmatically, every championship you kind of buy it.
Yeah, it's look, I don't devalue it. I mean, yes, they spent a lot of money. A lot of clubs spend a lot of money. City spends more than most. They're probably, I think, if you look at them statistically speaking, fourth or fifth in the world in terms of overall spending over the past couple of years. I'd say fourth probably. PSG, Real, and Barcelona would probably be the three ahead. But obviously that's a lot of money to spend there, and you demand some success, and there should be some success based on that. But you still have to mold these teams. You still have to take these players and make them into more. Otamendi, I just spoke of, that was a guy that was bought under Pellegrini, right? So this is not a Pep spending money. This is him molding a player that had been brought in with some degree of hype, probably overpaid for a little bit, disappointed, and then he's managed to make him into the player that he wanted. Raheem Sterling, the same way. They spent an awfully lot of money on him, but he wasn't necessarily performing at the level that people expected he should based on that transfer fee when he first came over, and now he is. I don't think that just because, the scale is higher that you diminish the accomplishments of the manager to mold these players. Would Pep be able to take, let's use the example of, I don't know, let's say you put him in Bristol City. Is he able to take Bristol City and bring them up to the top of the Premier League? Probably not. But could you take Bristol City and, sorry, go ahead.
Can Pep do it on a cold, rainy Tuesday in Stoke?
Well,
he did it, but managing Stoke, because basically it's what we're saying.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Right? But I truly understand what you're saying.
There's a ceiling based on the monetary thing, for sure. And the ceiling of City is unlimited, whereas the ceiling of a Stoke or a Bristol City, as I used, is lower. But I do believe that based on the examples that we've got here, the evidence that we have there, that Pep would take whatever team he was managing up to their ceiling. That's what I'm saying.
No, it totally makes sense. And I want to move this conversation to the other end of that spectrum in that game on Saturday. Tottenham. What's going on with Tottenham? A team touted to be a contender this year. Yes, there was the Harry Kane injury, but they performed pretty well during his injury. And not necessarily explaining why they're 7th right now. Yes, 1 point behind Burnley. Sean Dyche's team in 6th position. Scott Arfield, what's up, buddy? 6th in the Premier League for the Canadian international. I have to say I'm impressed by Burnley, but really disappointed by Tottenham with the team of Mauricio Pochettino, which, if you would have asked me in the beginning of the season, who's an underrated manager in the Premier League right now that has maybe a lot of influence on the result of his squad, I would have said Pochettino. Now I don't know what's going on with Tottenham. Dele Alli, You were talking about ceilings of club. Tottenham should be in the top 4 with the squad they have.
Well, as we've said many times, best overall record over the last 2 seasons, finished second both years. That's something that was it second or third the year before? It doesn't matter any. Yeah, they were.
But they were close. They were really close. Again, like you mentioned, they combined. They had the best 2 years, last 2 years. Then Chelsea or City or everybody else.
Look, I'm going to break the cardinal rule of analysis here, and I'm going to say I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with Spurs, but my theory is that maybe there's always a little bit of luck involved in sports. It's the thing that no one wants to talk about, and that luck can turn up or it can turn down, and it's just probably the case that Spurs is having a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of misfortune this season early on, and you combine that with other teams overachieving. You mentioned Burnley a second ago. You mentioned, we mentioned City at the extreme end of that, and they're having, a down season. So also things start to, confidence does matter. And once things start to go wrong, even if it's just, a bad bounce, so to speak, that can weigh on you and that can create more problems down the line. I mean, the Wembley factor could have played a role too. They didn't get the greatest start of the season based on their inability to immediately, I don't think it's necessarily an issue anymore, Wembley, but I think in the beginning of the season, in August, it was. So maybe that hurt them a little bit there. You lose a few points here and there, and suddenly in a competitive league like the Premier League, you're way behind. So, it's up to them to figure themselves out, because right now, you're running that danger of dropping out of those Champions League spots, and increasingly those become so vital the more competitive this league gets. If you miss out on the Champions League a couple years in a row, then you're in trouble. Now, the other part of that, too.
It's a lot of money, too, right? Sorry to interrupt, but missing the Champions League a couple years in a row, it's a lot of money that will hurt you 4 or 5 years down the road, right? Because that money that you get from the Champions League the year after, it helps you in the transfer window, which in theory would help you 6 months, a year down the road to get more players, to get more assets for your club. So missing the Champions League a few years in a row can be detrimental to your club in the short to midterm.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, 100%. It's all self-perpetuating. It's all, perpetuating, right?
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. It's like when you get relegated, you lose that you have that golden bridge, but you lose your revenue stream, you lose money to get back there. You have to get back there sooner rather than later. Otherwise, the gap builds and it becomes almost really difficult to get back to where you once were.
Yeah, the only positive I would say for Spurs this year is they did do quite well in the Champions League itself. Now, they've got a relatively tough draw with Juventus in the round of 16, but there is an opportunity for them. If they can get through Juventus, that would be a major accomplishment for a club like Spurs to really put a rose on an otherwise, what do plants go from, basically, right? Like that's kind of what they have to be thinking right now. Get back into the top 4.
Is it the Wembley curse? We forgot to say this. Is it the Wembley curse? Because they got a few results at Wembley this year, the beginning of the season. It's the transition year from the old White Hart Lane to the new White Hart Lane next year. But this year they're playing at Wembley. And at the beginning they had a few good results. But when you're looking at things, 7th, only 31 points, could it count as a part of the Wembley curse for the club, for the clubs? Yeah.
Yeah, well, as I said, I don't think it's cursed so much, but they did drop some points early that does play in the role. It's just such a competitive league. I mean, look, City's an extreme example here. They've dropped 2 points all year, and obviously that's going to have them run away. But you look at United, the way they're grinding away results and getting draws when they're maybe not playing well, and just when your confidence isn't quite there, the difference between dropping 3 points and 2 points in a day can make a major difference over the course of the season when things are that tight and when the top teams drop so few points. So you'd lose anything early on, especially at home, then you're going to have to fight to get it back, and it's going to be a long way back for Spurs right now. But as I said, they have the Champions League in front of them. Still in the cups too. So the cup, well, obviously they're still in the FA Cup. They haven't played yet, but there's still a chance to get something of this season, and that's where the real artistry of management comes right now, is to remotivate players when the title is up. Look, the title's gone. They're not winning the title this year. Overcoming 6 teams and 21 points would be that's just not even in the realm of possibility. Yeah. So
that's without Man City winning all those games that they have to. Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah, Man City is not going to drop 21 points the rest of the way, right? Like they're,
No.
they made. I don't. We could have a conversation about when the right. Well, maybe we should have that conversation right now. Is when do you start talking about the untalkable? And you're starting to hear whispers about it, which of course I'm speaking of the possibility of going without a loss through an entire Premier League season, which has only happened once before, as we know. Arsenal,
2004, Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah, and Arsenal had I think 11 draws in that season, so it was nowhere close to as dominant as this is right now. Pep keeps saying, he doesn't think that it's possible that they get through the whole season without losing a game. Whether that's a case of him trying to motivate the players, which I think it probably is, and that is probably his goal. It would be any manager's goal. You don't want to lose anything. But when do you? I think the answer. I have an answer for that. You start to have those conversations on January the 2nd.
Okay.
January the 3rd, whenever the Christmas period ends, so in 2 weeks from now.
Because there's like 4 games in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, if they get through those 4 games without losing, then I think maybe at that point you start to talk about both that. And if they win those games and they get through that quarterfinal game against Leicester in the League Cup, then I think you're having 2 conversations. You're talking about the possibility of them going undefeated, and you're talking about the possibility of the domestic treble, which has never happened before. Now, it's a bit early on the FA Cup side, but they haven't played yet.
Are you telling me
that
both your club are going to win the treble this year?
Well, I'm not telling you that's going to happen. I'm saying that if they get through this next round, then you start to have to consider that as a goal for the season, because then they're only, they're in the semifinals of the League Cup, and really they should be one of the favorites to win the FA Cup. I mean, they probably are the favorite to win the FA Cup, I would say.
So where's going to be the tattoo? Are you going to put it on your shoulders, on your thighs? Like, come on, you have to put 2 treble tattoos, like a Voyagers Cup or Supporters Shield and MLS Cup on one side, and on the other side maybe like a League Cup, an FA Cup, and maybe the Premier League trophy.
A blue 3 on my forehead, a red 3 on my neck.
Sure. That'll go over well with everyone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that'll help my future employment possibilities.
Well, I wanted to say it, but I didn't want to. I wanted to put it a nice way, or your future dating probabilities too. That's not going to help.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
All right. Match day 19 starts Friday. It's halfway through the season. We're going to keep an eye on it this weekend. A lot of games on Friday. Well, one on Friday, a lot on Saturday. There's one with Everton later today, but we'll be right back after this break with a little bit of bits and bites and MLS news, talk about the impact, Maxime Crépeau, Joel Batz, and more.
Money in the cash register. Mr. Duncan is going to donate to the Children's Hospital.
At midnight tonight, we're hitting Duncan's toy chest.
You can mess with a lot of things. You can't mess with kids on Christmas.
You can mess with a lot of things, but you can't mess with a guy's playing time. If you're getting new players in, like French goalkeepers formerly playing with LA Galaxy or the DOS, now coming into Montreal with a brand new goalkeeper coach, Joel Batz. Well, if you feel your playing time is going to be diminished or none at all, which apparently is what Maxime Crépeau was said by Rémi Gare. I was like, Maxime, sorry, you're not going to get a single minute in Major League Soccer this year. Hence the alleged Maxime Crépeau trade request.
Well, yeah, I mean, why? They need to move him somewhere. A loan would be fine, I'm sure. I mean, obviously he's looking to play in Major League Soccer, but if that doesn't happen, at least they've got to get him, guaranteed minutes in Ottawa or something. Like something's got to give here. You got a player that, and I'm sure that Mr. Zambrano is sort of in his ear as well, telling him to get somewhere to play. And look, at this point, if you're Maxime Crépeau, you've got to be looking anywhere. You've got to be looking USL, the Finnish league. I picked the Finnish league off the top of my head because that is sort of one of those lower leagues in Europe. A
safe haven for Canadians. Well, let's put it this way: it was always been an opportunity. There's always been opportunities there for Canadians that wanted them.
Yeah, well, the level is at such that a guy like Crépeau, I think, could step in and play like the league like that. He's got to go somewhere, and I think it's I think it would be fair for Montreal to let him go somewhere and to let him go somewhere for free if they have to, because he's given them a lot already and, been patient. And now for them to bring a guy in that he probably looks at it, he's probably okay with Bush being ahead of him. But to have someone come in to take his backup spot away.
Well, it's that. And the fact that they signed James Pantemis too. Like, let's not forget, they signed James Pantemis from the academy. So what is the thinking behind signing James Pantemis? Yes, he was at that point in his development. He was ready, and he was, if we go with what Philippe Lafroy always said in the last few years, Philippe Lafroy, director of the Montreal Impact Academy, when a player is ready and good enough, he gets his homegrown contract, and he signs with the pro club. So that's where James Pantemis is in his development. But what's the mentality behind it? When we're looking at where Crépeau is, and there's Evan Bush, and now there's Clément Diop as well, maybe you're thinking, all right, maybe Crépeau is not where we thought he would be. We know we can get maybe a few years out of Evan Bush and maybe a few backup by Clément Diop. So maybe we have that 2-3 years to get Pantemis ready and just forget about Crépeau. And I think that's a bit of the problem that could have right now is Crépeau could be part of a quote-unquote lost generation, the lost FC Montreal generation for the Montreal Impact Academy. He is the single most effective player by the lack of reserve team, the lack of USL team of the Montreal Impact. He was the one that benefited the most about the FC Montreal. He played majority of those games. There's Yann Filion too, but Maxime Crépeau had his playing minutes with FC Montreal, and he is the sole most affected players by that decision a few years ago to end FC Montreal, and it's really unfortunate.
Well, he's Quinlan Roberts. He's a French Quinlan Roberts, right? Like
literally.
Essentially, yeah. They're the same age. They're the same generation. I mean, Crépeau might be a year younger or so, but they're
the only difference is Crépeau is still with the club as we speak. That's pretty much the only difference.
Whereas Quinlan was, he was playing in League One last year. No shame in that, but at the same time, it's not exactly where he wanted to be. And I don't know what Crépeau's answer is. Yeah, he's got to go find a club. And as I said a minute ago, if they truly don't believe in him as a long-term option for them, then I don't think there is any value in Montreal holding him hostage in any way whatsoever. They should just have a mutual termination, like Moba Booley. That is a good example. I haven't brought him up in a while, but what happened with the Moba Booley situation is that Greg Vandy essentially sat down at the start of this year and said, look, this is the reality, is that you are our fifth forward and you don't really fit our system. So you're welcome to stay and play that role as a fifth forward, with the probability that you're not going to see more than, maybe a few minutes of scrap time in the Canadian Championship, or I can release you and you can find a club. And he ended up, landing on his feet, playing professionally in Syria. I think that the Montreal Impact owe Crépeau the same kind of dignity as that, is to be honest with him and to say, look, there's no hard feelings here. We think we understand you have some ambition. We don't think you fit us. So be free and go find something and wish you luck.
And there's the weird aspect, too, of the brand new goalkeeper coach coming into Montreal, Joël Batz, which, by the way, it hasn't been confirmed by the Montreal Impact, but it's been confirmed by everybody else, which includes the Olympique Lyonnais, which includes Joël Batz and all the journalists present at the game 2 days ago, or yesterday. Joël Batz managed his last game as the goalkeeper coach for Olympique Lyonnais yesterday, Olympique de Lyon. And the supporters serenaded him. And if you look into the history of Joël Batz, there's a big, infamous moment now, where a few years ago, there was controversies with the Ultras of Lyon, and Joël Batz took a standing with the supporters, taking a scarves of the Bad Gones, which is the name of the supporters in the North Curva of Olympique Lyon, taking that scarf and draping it on the goal, on the net, creating a pitch invasion. And that was an infamous moment that probably created a lot of that cult hero aspect of Joël Batz supportership. Like, the fans love this guy. This guy's a goalkeeper coach, and he had songs, tifos, everything thanking him for his 17 years of service. Joël Batz is a lot more than a goalkeeper coach. He was an assistant coach. He was a mental philosopher, an amazing mentor as well for the goalkeepers, for other players, for the fans. The proximity he had with the supporters were really fascinating, and I think it's a positive for him to be coming to Montreal. But this is all related to he's coming in, and he wants to work probably with a very young keeper that he can mold for the future, a.k.a. James Pentemis, and got signed. He might like to work with some French goalkeepers. Clément Diop got picked up in the re-entry draft by the Impact. Or was it anyways, he got picked up by the Impact, and you have Evan Bush, established goalkeeper in Major League Soccer. I don't think all of those decisions are coincidental. I think they're related, but I have to say, I'm impressed by how the supporters said bye to Joel Batz. And the more I read about Mr. Batz, the more I am impressed by his resume, and the more I am impressed by the coaching staff that Rémi Garde is putting together. Duane, apparently, the Montreal Impact physical preparator, the strength and conditioning, we used to call those coaches.
Yeah.
He's the former one of France in 2006. Where did they go in 2006? Oh, yeah, World Cup final. So we have the physical preparator of a World Cup finalist team for the Montreal Impact for 2018.
Fair enough. World Cup champion team 2006, but
no, they lost to Italy. Duane, do you remember Zidane?
Oh yeah. I was mixing Italy and France up. Forgive me there. That was strange to me.
Zidane. I still it still hurts when I think of Zidane hitting Materazzi, but that's a long time ago.
Just to finish with Capo real quickly though, I don't know, from your perspective, closer to it, is there something about his game that they don't like, do you think? Or is this just, I don't know, wanting to go younger, like you say?
I think it's a bit of everything. But the style of Crépeau and the style that Rémi Garde might want to play, I don't know if they're compatible. When you're looking at new goalkeepers, talking about being able to play from the back, right? We've heard Patrick Vieira.
About footwork.
Yeah, we're talking about footwork. We're talking about being able to have the ball and be comfortable with it. Talking about a Patrick Vieira style of having a play from the back and go up like New York City FC, or a Pep Guardiola or whatever. And when you don't have a goalkeeper that you have confidence in his abilities, you can't rely on him. But if you don't give the guy playing time, you can't really earn that confidence. So again, it's that same vicious cycle that we were talking about earlier. And at one point, to stop a vicious cycle, someone has to take a stand. And I think Crépeau has decided that he's taking his.
Fair enough, yeah. I mean, look, the evolution of the goalkeeping position with the, needing to be good with the feet, it's something that you've seen for a while. And I think that a lot of fans fall in love with keepers that make spectacular shot stops or shot stoppers, right? And they're not necessarily seeing all the technical stuff behind the scenes and the footwork and positioning and things like that, which, as I've said before many times, if you make a lot of spectacular saves, that could mean you're very athletic, or it could mean you're
very bad at positioning, and you have to make last-ditch saves to stop goals because you're not at the right spot at the right time. That's what we used to say. Remember Donovan Ricketts? We used to talk on this show about goalkeepers. I was like, oh, do you see that spectacular save? Yeah, it's spectacular because it wasn't supposed to be there. It's supposed to be 4 foot the other way. It would have been a normal save, but no, of course. Oh, but it'll be interesting to follow the evolution of the goalkeeping situation in Montreal. But again, I am quite impressed. Remember when Joey Saputo a few months ago said, oh, we're a totally different category now with Rémi Garde and the rest of the staff? And it was rumored that the investment of Joey Saputo for the entire training staff was very high, was in the 7 numbers. And now with the names coming out and the names being announced and the names taking the planes to travel to Montreal in January, well, yeah, Joey was right. Joey figured out something, Duane, that he can't compete on the pitch with majority of the teams, but he can hire an expensive coach and try to bridge that gap, at least on the sideline.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, a $1.5 million coach is a different scale than a $1.5 million player. I mean, both are decent, but a $1.5 million manager is near the top of this field. And so it's kind of a tricky way through. And it might be something that you see more clubs in the Impact sort of, I would call them middle class. I wouldn't call them lower class in Major League Soccer. I think Joey is trying pour a little bit there, but
blue collar,
he's not.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I might even put them like middle management here, but that's, Joey's got some money. Saputo, there's a lot of cheese that's being sold. So look, but they're not at MLS's level. They're not at the LAFC level, right? They're not at Atlanta's level. So So I get that. So it is, if in fact it works, then you have to get the right guy. But I will give him credit for sort of thinking a bit outside the box here. So rather than trying to get into an arms race for players, you try and, go about it a different way and spend the money you do have on, managers, as you say. And at the very least, if you're a Montreal fan, take solace in the fact that you're not, I'm trying to think what the example on the other side of this. Like
you're
Minnesota,
not Colorado. You're not Colorado.
So Colorado. Or even Minnesota's original approach where they were like, we're not even going to have a DP because we can do it better without. No, you can't.
Speaking of Minnesota, there's a book that came out today on 55.1 by our friends at 55.1, Dark Clouds. It's a good way to describe the first season for Minnesota. But there's a book tracing Minnesota's first year of history in Major League Soccer. If you are well inclined, it's a nice reading suggestion or a nice stocking stuffer for the next week. The one thing I wanted to talk about today, Duane, but we're running out of time, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about it in the next few days, is Kaka. Kaka's retiring. And that's the second time in the last few months that a player plays for MLS. He announced he's not coming back to the club, and clearly, we all know he's retiring, but he doesn't want to say it because, he doesn't want to retire as an MLS player, so he just retires. He just, leaves. And then in his own accord does a press conference or an Instagram post or a social media letter saying he's retiring. What's wrong? What's so wrong saying you're going to retire in an Orlando shirt? I don't know. Maybe there's something happened there.
The only thing I can say is that perhaps he did some brief, he retired. Okay, obviously I'm not going back here. Put a few feelers out, probably back in Brazil. Sort of the kind of offers that were coming back weren't exactly what he was looking for. So he went, you know what? Maybe I don't want to train again. That's the other thing too.
It's not the games, right? It's the training.
Well, I've heard that from athletes. It wasn't about playing. I could have played another season, but I could not have prepared to play another season. Like I've heard that exact kind of phrasing before, where the idea of I was supposed to wake up and start my preseason regiment today at 7 a.m, and I sat in bed and hit snooze and went, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that,
you know what? F this. I'm staying in. Yeah. I'm not getting up. I'm done.
Yep, that's it. I'm out. I'm out. Drop the mic. Way to go. No, Kaka, obviously, brilliant player for Player of the Year, World Player of the Year. We talked a lot about it at the time.
It's the last time someone that was human won the Player of the Year, right? The last time before it was the Messi-Ronaldo domination.
Exactly, and he wasn't quite Pirlo levels in MLS, but he was probably not what Orlando needed. So, we're not going to go down that road too far there. He had a great career. And
let's put it, he's exactly right smack in the middle of where David Villa and Andrea Pirlo are. Like right in the middle of this, that's where Kaka fit. He was instrumental in some games, some wins, some goals, but at the end of the day, didn't really influence results of where Orlando landed in their first 3 years.
I think his first season was his best season, and he declined each year after that, and clearly was at the end this year. And it was the right time for him to step aside. And he'll be remembered. He won't be remembered as an Orlando player. He'll be remembered elsewhere. But that's the first. There will be a long time, I think, before a player retires at a world level like Kaka is remembered for his MLS time. But we're maybe getting closer to that, but it's still a few years away.
And as we finish the show, Duane, you mentioned Andrea Pirlo, and it's really fitting you mentioned this because I wanted to end the show with this. I know you don't see the video right now, but on the video, you see a nice little Italy national soccer ball signed by the maestro himself, Andrea Pirlo. This ball is up for auction. This ball that you're seeing could be yours. All the proceeds will go to Leo Abraham's GoFundMe, Toronto FC supporter who died on his way home from the Eastern Conference Finals second leg. No one deserves to not make it home after watching a soccer game with their family. And the proceeds will go to Leo Abraham, where we thank Murphy Malone for the gift of this ball to us to find a new home with this show. You can comment in the YouTube section here. Send me an email, sportspodcastingnetwork@gmail.com. If you want that ball, you can have it. Reserve is at $50 plus shipping and handling. Every single proceeds goes to Leo Abraham's GoFundMe. I only want the differences for shipping and handling. The rest all goes for the GoFundMe, and this ball can be yours. Could go in your studio, could go in your office, in your living room, bedroom, wherever you like. It's a Maestro ball. It's signed by one of the best dead ball specialists in the history of this game. So, Duane, this could be interesting.
Fair enough, and by all means, go out and make a bid on that if you're an Italy fan, if you're a Pirlo fan, if you're an NYCFC fan, if you're just a fan of the game. All right, Kevin, as always, I'm going to let you wrap the show up.
You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. with more soccer perspective of the world of football. And until then, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.